Justine, give me access to record.
Number 347, if you need it in your gray hymnal. and welcome to Foothills Unitarian Church. My name is Kristen. I am a friend and a former minister of Foothills. It is so good to see so many of you this morning. I am grateful to be leading this service alongside Lauren and alongside Julie, who is on the piano, and we have Linda in the sound booth. We've got Doug on the simulcast. We have Tim, who's our worship host. So many people, right? So many people. All of our greeters, so many people make this Sunday morning possible.
I am Lauren. I am the Engagement and Family Ministry Coordinator here at Foothills, and I am so glad to be with you this morning. Whether you're here in the room or joining us online, it is so good to be together. In this church, we believe that every person is worthy of love without exception, and that we are all in this life together. The combination of these makes us a church that values both courage and humility, knowing that each of us holds a piece of the truth, and also that we need each other to make any sense of this life. This is one of the many reasons we gather together and why we are so glad to welcome each of you, and especially our kids and young people who are here with us today. And also those of you who are new. If you're visiting or just beginning to find your way, we offer you a special welcome today. We know it can be intimidating to start out with a new church, and so we want to do whatever we can to make you feel welcome and at ease right from the start. So there will be someone at the welcome table in the social hall after the service, and I will be on the patio to help greet and welcome newcomers as well after. And folks who are joining us online this morning, you can look forward to a visit from Reverend Kristen right at the conclusion of the service. She'll come hang out with you for some breakout discussion before she joins everyone else out on the patio for community hour. And you are all invited to join us for the goodness of community hour. Today we will have a newcomer drop-in, as I mentioned, and also our Sanctuary Everywhere group will be serving tamales on the patio. So there's an extra delicious reason to hang out with us today. Let us begin our time together now with the sound of the singing bowl, inviting all parts of ourselves to be here together now.
Good morning. My name is Becky Wagner. Back in April of this year, I shared with you in a chalice lighting that I had decided to metaphorically reclaim my post-COVID life as a fungus because of the work that the kingdom of the fungi do, namely create new soil from new life, from which all new life grows. In all honesty, nowhere in my mind was I anywhere near considering the physical impacts that the fungi have upon the human brain when consumed. Since taking the viewpoint of the fungus, I've learned an amazing amount about the world they inhabit and create. The film Fantastic Fungi on Netflix delighted me, and I watched it several times, mesmerized. But I've also started to pay attention more to the world around me that they inhabit, and they inhabit a lot of it. They are everywhere. Death is everywhere. It is so much a part of life. The natural world embraces endings as joyously as it does new beginnings. And new beginnings can be found in the midst of endings. The whole experience is cyclical and spiral in nature. There really is no ending or beginning, just recycling and regeneration. Another part of my paying attention has been increased intentionality about my time spent in nature, listening with new ears, seeing with new eyes, feeling the vibrations of the birds' wings as they fly past, hearing the fungus grow along the forest floor, watching the sunlight reflect from the leaves of the trees as they flutter in the wind, relishing the sound of the river as it flows along on its journey to its destination, getting lost in the fullness of the full moon, feeling in my heart the gratitude for the beauty of this amazing planet and the sorrow for which we as a species are abusing. Knowing that Earth is created out of love and can be healed out of love. If we humans can remember what it feels like to be, to live in love. Michael Pollan says that you can learn some of these same things by taking fungi into your body under controlled conditions. I would think there would be some truth in that statement, but I really do not know from any firsthand experience. I do know that this fungi kingdom can be our friend if we learn how to collaborate with it and use it wisely and carefully. It has many lessons to teach us, as does the earth. We will only stop long enough to listen and look to hear, and to see what she has to offer. It requires that we slow down, that we live more gently and intentionally with what she has given us. She requires that we reestablish a relationship with her, a more personal one, a more intimate one, a more reciprocal one. In the spirit of our shared faith, I light our chalice as a beacon of hope and light. Please join me in our chalice. Yes.
Love is the spirit of His church, and service is His law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to love one another.
Call us to worship this morning with these excerpts from the Reverend Kim Wilczewski. She wrote these a couple days ago. Here is what we learned this week, she says. Deep within the history of our universe, there have been galaxies dancing together, stretching each other. Did you see it? Did you see the pictures of NASA's Webb telescope? We now know, we now can see 5 galaxies. Let's stop there, she says. One galaxy is a huge collection of gas, dust, billions of stars, and each of those stars' solar systems held together by gravity. This week we saw images of 5 galaxies. I can't actually conceptualize that, she says, and I agree. But what I've learned is that 4 of those interact. They are pulling on one another. They are influencing each other. They are forming baby stars. What if we decided these images came at just the right time? When the world, our teeny, tiny, gorgeous, ornate, inimitable world feels so incredibly despairing, what if we learn to look differently at it, at us? If we began to wonder about what we didn't know, couldn't see, couldn't even conceptualize really, but took up the practice of zooming in and zooming out, I think we'd finally find possibility. I think we'd learn to breathe, to let go. to give thanks, to bow in awe, she writes. Today, we come to this space with whole worlds, whole solar systems of joy and sorrow, dancing and stretching inside our very own bodies. Hate has influenced how we love. Hope accompanies our depressions. Life combats the enclosures, the closets, the confines that seem to be building up around us everywhere. Whole solar systems within us. If it's too much to accept our speckness today, if it feels like one more overwhelming new thing, zoom in. Zoom into your own universe and discover there what you could not see before. Zoom out and allow yourself to see the enormity of the system, the village, the interdependence of which we are a part. Be held. Be held in the possibility that is still before us, still stretching and forming, still inviting us to dance, breathe, let go, give thanks. Come, let us worship together. As we turn to our opening song this morning, familiar to many of you, Turn the World Around. I want to mention that Harry Belafonte, when he wrote this opening song, he was inspired, impacted, changed by a culture outside of his own. He had had an encounter with a leader from Guinea, a country in West Africa, who spoke to the wisdom of the 4 elements. The song is in our hymnal, and as you sing, I invite you to imagine your own lineage, those ancestors of birth or affinity, maybe way, 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 way back, who also lived an intimate relationship with earth, fire, water, and air. Let us sing.
From the mountain
I'm going to invite all of us now into a meditation on the four directions, adapted from the work of Reverend Julia Hamilton. In the pagan tradition, which is grounded in a respect and reverence for the natural world, calling upon the four directions is the usual way to begin any ceremony. Each direction is associated with an element of the natural world and represents some part of our human nature as well. The directions are not separated or isolated, but rather a part of the interdependent system that makes up the world. And we know that here in our sanctuary, the corners of the room correspond to the four directions. So those of you at home, I invite you to take a moment and orient yourself as well. For us here, east, south, west, and north. We begin in the east, toward the rising sun. Air and breath give us life. It is the direction of inspiration, the word that literally means to take in air. As I speak, let us all represent the air with our bodies. You can move your arms like the waving wind. Beautiful, or whatever way that feels good to you. The East is associated with the mind, with knowledge and learning, and your arms can rest whenever they're ready. It's okay. We associate the East with intellectual curiosity. Imagine the birds turning and wheeling in the air. Imagine the breeze blowing through your hair. You might even feel a fan blowing through your hair, depending on where you're sitting this morning. Turning toward the east, we look for a fresh start, invigorating breath, a new idea. When you are feeling stuck or in a rut, beholden to a routine, or if the wind has gone out of your sails, look eastward. We move around the wheel to the south. The element of the south is fire. And we can represent the fire with our bodies like this. Fire is a transformative force. It is heat and light and powerful change. Notice the flame of our chalice, burning with the light of love and the energy of action. In the Northern Hemisphere, it makes a lot of sense that we associate the fire with the South. Toward the equator, toward the warmth of the sun and the heat of the flame. We see birds move south, butterflies move south, whales move south, seeking warmer places when the weather gets cold, when our internal weather gets cold. Turning toward the south is a metaphor of turning towards warmth and daylight, seeking out the changes that will warm us up, get our blood moving, and call us out of our winters, out of our hibernation, and into action. When we continue our circle, we find the west. The element of the west is water. We can represent the water with our bodies by making waves, with our arms, or whatever way your body calls you to show the water. You might think of the water that we bring together every fall in our ingathering ceremony of water communion. We add to this water every year, symbolizing the ways we come together in community as individual drops, joining into a mighty river. In the West, we are drawn into the experience of our emotions. It is a direction that calls us to self-reflection and self-understanding. Our emotions move in us like water, flowing through our lives, sometimes calm and sometimes turbulent. Always though, always flowing. When we dam up our feelings, just like we dam up a river, the pressure builds until it finds an outlet. If you are seeking to get in touch with your inner life, with your emotions, turn toward the west. We move now to the north. The element of the north is earth. We can represent the earth with our bodies by moving our arms in the great round sphere of our planet. There is stability here, the ground of our being. The north represents the place that holds us, that allows us time and space to heal and to grow, to feel nurtured and respected. It is also the place of embodiment, connecting with our physical self, with the concrete, tangible world around us. The north may call to you if you are seeking balance and the deep wisdom that lives in your bones, in a place of rest and recovery. We have moved through these 4 directions and given them shape and meaning with our bodies, with the air, the fire, the water, and the earth. Now I invite you here to turn toward the direction that calls to you today. The east, for air, breath, and inspiration. The fire, transformation and action. The water, feeling and reflection. The earth, balance and wisdom. So you can move your own body and actually physically orient yourself today to whatever is calling to you. You can do that in your seat. You can stand up if that feels good. You can turn your head or just make the motion that is resonating with you today. And let that element speak into yourself and your body in this moment. Breathe here in and out. One more breath. And we can return to our seats and sing together. The words will be on our screen. All of the wonderful children and young people who are here with us today to move out into the aisles and start to come towards the front. Oh, and so many of you know just what to do. I love it. I invite you to rise and reach out your arms toward each other to make an arch of blessing. And as kids, we move under this arch of blessing, and I'm gonna meet you over on the patio to begin our explorations in the other building today.
Love is the spirit of this church, and it is in this spirit that we companion one another through our joys and our sorrows, and especially in the way these things tend to arrive all at once in a tangled blessing we call life. As I share some of the joys and sorrows of this community, I want to offer a special invitation to our Zoom community. If you'd like to share something on your heart, a joy, a sorrow, a mix of all of it, we invite you to do so in the chat. This morning, our hearts are heavy with the news that Foothills member Lacey Bearden died last Saturday morning. Yes, Lacey lived with type 1 diabetes and had significant health struggles, but this was still a shock. I invite you to just take a deep breath. So many of you know personally, Lacey was a bright star. She was warm and funny, whether you met her on the walking trail, right? Or over Zoom or at coffee hour. She was funny and positive and deeply kind. Everything you feel in response to this news is so welcome here in this sacred space. Keith is feeling supported by his gather group and the Foothills community. His brothers joined him. They came into town this week to offer him additional support. There will be a memorial date shared soon. Sending our love to Keith, sending my love to each of you in the way that you're receiving this news right now. Beyond all this that we've named, let us honor the joys and the sorrows that rest silently on your own hearts, and that rest silently in the hearts of all those in our Zoom community as well. I invite you to join me in a moment in the spirit of prayer, spirit of meditation. I like to let my eyes close. It's just a moment of taking a couple deep breaths together and really getting a sense of what's truly on your heart. Spirit of life, spirit of one abundant love. Thank you for this time to be together, to feel the importance and the connection of community. Thank you to those on our left and our right, whether we know them or not. We offer our gratitude to their story and our love to all that they carry as they walked into this room this morning. May each of us know in this exact moment how completely loved we are exactly as we are for all that we carry. This morning and this week, may we be met with companionship, friendship, just some kind of recognition of whatever we hold on our heart. May we have a place to share the sorrow. May we have a place to celebrate the joy together with others. Take a deep breath, and if it's available to us, we breathe in love, and we breathe out love, and send it to wherever it's needed. And remember that there is a love that holds all. May it be so. Amen. Join me now in singing, There is a Love.
There
that you just stay with your breath and feel the fullness and presence of this silence for a moment. I recently heard someone name that we're living in the Erimocene, or the age of loneliness. When I heard it, I was driving up our mountain road on my way home. It was dusk, and the road was quiet. And when I heard it, we're living in the Erimocene, the age of loneliness, I felt this resonance in my body. Yes, I thought, yes, that feels right. So much loneliness everywhere, so much disconnection. Not that this is the only way, right, to capture these times that we're in, but it is one way that names something true. It's one of the things actually that I love about church. Church can be an antidote, right, in this age of loneliness. It can be a place of connection and belonging. Even right now, as we gather across platforms, some of us here in the sanctuary in person, others of us in the sanctuary of our kitchens, and we've all paused the regular movements of our lives to move as one body, to connect for this sacred 1 hour, to sing, to share of our joys and sorrows, and to explore big and meaningful questions about life together. And for many people, across cultures and time, gathering in this way to pray, to sing, to share on intentional occasions included plant medicines. It included a sacred and intentional partnership with plants and fungi to expand consciousness beyond ordinary human perception in order to experience what's already here through the support of more than human life. We find this even in the roots of Christianity. A recent bestseller, The Immortality Key by Brian Muraresku, explores the long-held theory that an earth-based religious community in ancient Greece that influenced Christianity centered around a group ritual involving a fungus known as ergot that grows on wheat and barley and which contains a chemical close to LSD. Muraresku's rigorous 10 years of research uncovered an archaeological study that discovered residues of this fungus in a ritualistic drinking vessel dated to this time at a shrine connected to this religious community. Right now, thousands of years later, in 2022, we are in the midst of what many have called the Psychedelic Renaissance. Have you all heard of this term? I hear some laughter, so maybe that's a yes. After 50 plus years of the war on drugs, I bet you've heard of that one. Yeah. The war on drugs, a new wave of research and clinical trials, well-funded, coming out of high-profile institutions, are sharing paradigm-shifting findings. Researchers at Johns Hopkins, for example, have been studying the impact of single large-dose psilocybin, which is the psychedelic compound in magic mushrooms, large-dose psilocybin journeys on those living with existential distress from a terminal diagnosis. They report these findings, these scientists from Johns Hopkins, that a significant majority of its trial participants experienced considerable relief for up to 6 months after a single supported journey. Then there are the clinical trials studying the impact of something called MDMA. MDMA-assisted therapy for those specifically living with complex PTSD. Those who have tried, folks who have complex PTSD who got into these trials, they have tried everything, every route available to them for healing. Veterans, survivors of devastating trauma. MDMA, right, is a synthetic psychedelic found in ecstasy, but used in its pure form in this context. And the results aligning with one story I recently heard. Her name is Lori. Interviewed after her MDMA-assisted therapy experience, Lori shared that at first she was nervous. I would be too. But by her side were two trained therapists who she had been working with for weeks and who would companion her, be right there with her for each of the 3 8-hour psychedelic journeys. After taking the medicine, she laid down in a quiet room, and I imagine that she was surrounded by comforts. Soft couch, a blanket, inviting lighting, candles, really intentional music, and an eye covering to support her journey going inside. And Lori came to this experience with an intention to turn toward an early childhood trauma that had shaped the rest of her life. She spoke her intention, the therapist held this intention with her. It's what they tacked their collective ship for the journey ahead. In the embrace of MDMA, Lori shares, I was able to find empathy for myself. I realized how much I was thinking this experience was my fault. Lori had described before this experience living with PTSD as a sense of feeling unsafe in most places, most of the time, almost no matter what. And for her, through the safe and intentional use of a psychedelic in a supportive and connected therapeutic relationship, she began to re-story her life. Through an altered state of consciousness in an intentional, safe, and supportive container, she was able to re-see her life from a place of softness and compassion and begin the journey of healing. MDMA is a heart-opening medicine, often talked about as an empathogen. So it allowed Lori to not just think about love and compassion, but to feel love and compassion as she turned toward her own life and her own story. What a gift for her. Whether on NPR, CNN, or maybe through the Netflix documentary, How to Change Your Mind, that was just released this week, perhaps you've caught wind of the therapeutic impacts of psilocybin, MDMA, ketamine, and maybe even LSD or cannabis. I want to invite us to pause here, to take a moment to check in with yourself, maybe even take a deep breath. And notice what is happening right now in your own experience, if it's available to you, as we talk about drugs, right? What do you notice? Maybe you're feeling curious, intrigued. Maybe you even feel a sense of aliveness that you haven't felt in a while. Maybe you feel resistant or something else entirely. The groundbreaking benefits of intentional psychedelic or sacred medicine use is not the story that I grew up in. Maybe it's not the one that you all grew up in either. Born in the 1980s, I grew up with the public service announcements featuring the fried egg on the big cast iron skillet. Not subtle, right? Not subtle. This is your brain on drugs. Really left a mark on me, I think. I hid my minimal cannabis use as a young adult, feeling the weight of shame around it, which even carried over to legal cannabis use as an adult, Somehow that shame lingering just below the surface that I never remember consenting to, launched with vigor in the 1970s with President Nixon at the helm. The war on drugs targeted Black and brown people and communities, even though psychoactive substances were being used in white communities at equal rates. The racialized drug war devastated families and whole communities. It led to mass incarceration, cost billions, and never worked. Never worked. And not only didn't work, the war on drugs was never even backed by scientific evidence, but by a political agenda. The 1994 interview with Harper's Magazine, John Ehrlichman, a high-ranking Nixon official, confessed this without hesitation. He says, "The Nixon White House had two enemies, the anti-war left and Black people. You understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or Black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and Blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt both communities," he says. He adds, "We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. Did we know we were lying about drugs? Of course we did," he says. That one was, in all seriousness, right? That one was hard for me to take in. Clarifying, affirming, yes, but devastating, right? This has really devastated families and communities, real people's lives. Today, in the wake of these shifting tides, psychedelic use is up across age groups. Whether it's a weekend ayahuasca retreat or microdosing mushrooms, maybe that's you, maybe it's your child or your spouse. In any gathered community, it's here. And what I witness at the root of this reaching for plant medicines or psychoactive substances, perhaps what we might even talk about as the spirit of the psychedelic renaissance, what I witness is a reaching for connection, a reaching for a felt sense of interconnection, of interdependence with all life, of relationship with the more than human life, a longing, deep-bodied longing for a felt sense of belonging to life at the level of the heart, the body, maybe even the spirit. We know this to be true, right? That we are connected, that you are, that I am interconnected, interdependent, that we belong to the web of life. It's part of the very ground of our faith. And yet it's one thing to know this with our minds, to believe in a thought, an idea, and it's another thing to feel it, to feel connected. When do you feel connected? There are so many ways on this path. I'm talking about one of them. When do you feel connected? Connected to yourself, or to your spouse, or partner, your friends, or to the earth? When do you feel connected? Maybe it's hiking, biking, skiing. Maybe it's food, cooking for yourself or those you love, gardening. Maybe it's when you're on your yoga mat or in your meditation practice. And maybe you don't have an answer because you feel that heavy and ever-present ache of disconnection from yourself, from others, from life. I see you, I hear you, you're not alone. I want to be very clear about this. Intentionally journeying with psychedelics and plant medicines is not the only path toward this felt experience of connection. And it is part of the path for many, as has been the case for millennia. And psychedelics are not a magic pill. Healing, whatever that means for you and your life, takes hard work, right? Support, practice, therapy, commitment, community, integration, trying again and then again and then again. And I don't just mean healing from PTSD. I mean healing from shame, healing from individualism, capitalism, supremacy of all kinds, healing from loneliness. Psychedelics are not right for everyone, and they are not right at any or every point in life. Partnering with psychedelics to support your healing and the healing of communities requires intention. Right now, I am an affiliated community minister with the UU Church of Boulder, and my current community ministry is with a mindfulness-based psychedelic therapy clinic. I work as a psychedelic guide and explore the ancient yet emerging fields of psychedelic spiritual care and psychedelic chaplaincy. At the clinic, we work only with legal psychedelics, those that are currently legal now. So that means ketamine and cannabis. But we also offer harm reduction support regardless of what medicine someone is using. And I'd like to offer a little of that here with you this morning, briefly. So if you or someone you know or love is considering or is already using psychedelics, here's what I would offer. Understand set and setting. Choosing to take LSD, mushrooms, or cannabis at a party or a concert will be different from creating a sacred space in your home with a candle and a playlist and eye shades. One route, I'm of the belief that one route is not inherently better actually than the other. They can both be done with intention. This is more to say that the setting really matters, where you are, significantly, as does your mindset. That set part, set and setting. Your mindset matters, your intention, why going into the journey. Second, safety matters. Get curious about safety, ethics, accountability. If you are being led by someone who identifies as a psychedelic guide or a shamanic practitioner, know your medicine, get to know the medicine you will be using, its history, its makeup, your dose. Two more I want to mention. Take it slow. Take it slow. These are powerful medicines. Take your time as you pursue this path if you feel called. Take a breath, then another breath, and then another one. And finally, integration is the medicine. Intentionally integrating your altered state of consciousness experience, ideally with support, into your ordinary day-to-day, right? Integrating, kind of pulling into your ordinary day-to-day before jumping into your next one. This is where the magic is, the integration. This is where change can really happen. Each day in this work, I live in growing reverence to the ancient wisdom of plants, our oldest teachers, and the indigenous cultures that preserved many of these medicines and practices through generations of violence and colonialism. One of my hopes as psychedelic therapy continues to grow is that we, as people of faith and conscience, get more engaged in the conversation and the movement. The church, after all, has been in the work of healing forever. And Unitarian Universalists, we've been faithfully showing up on the side of love and justice for generations. There's a need and an opening now for progressive religious voices to bring equity, justice, and love to this quickly emerging space of psychedelic therapy. We can start by asking questions like, how do people without a lot of wealth get access to psychedelic therapy? Or what about indigenous reciprocity? What does that look like? To return to indigenous communities today and on their terms, where many of these now labeled therapeutic practices and substances originate. And also, how do we build in complex reparations for Black, Brown, and Indigenous people as psychedelics become legal and psychedelic therapy gets officially defined? There are 2 initiatives on the ballot this fall in Colorado. My hope also in this so-called psychedelic renaissance is that we make room for spirit, that we get curious about the relationship between spiritual experiences and mental health. And by spiritual experience, all I mean is that felt sense of profound connection. And I hope we get curious about the life, the animating essence, some would even say the spirit of the plants or the fungi, of the more than human life that we are taking into our bodies. It turns out that the root of the word eremos, is ancient Greek and most often translates actually to wilderness. Yes, we might feel alone in the wilderness, but the truth is we're also surrounded by life. Complex and beautiful web of life of which we are a part, a sacred part. In this age of the wilderness, then, may we know and feel our interdependence with all life in our bones. We offer gratitude to the more than human life in this wild terrain that invites us back into connection each day through the summer creek, the mountains, or plants or fungi. And may this felt sense of connection remind us that we belong in this and to this wilderness, and that we are loved simply by the nature of this belonging and held by a greater love that holds all. Amen. And may it be so. This congregation invites us each to respond to the gift of life, the gift of this community through the sharing of our resources. As a practice of generosity, Foothills gives half of the offering plate every Sunday to a community partner with shared values. This month, we are grateful to be sharing the offering with Sanctuary Everywhere, a ministry the church oversees and yet is open and inclusive to volunteers and leaders beyond just this community. Sanctuary Everywhere started in 2019 when it became clear that in-church sanctuary, so providing refuge for those courageously resisting their deportation orders in church, was no longer viable. So instead, a group of creative and committed volunteers and leaders began forming villages of support around asylum seekers who already live in Fort Collins. Since then, Sanctuary Everywhere has formed 5 villages and companioned 5 families in a time of great transition, stress, and insecurity. That support really, really matters. Throughout the work, Foothills has partnered with immigrant-led community organizations in Fort Collins, especially La Cocina. This tangible, impactful, and life-changing ministry requires ongoing financial support, especially to help immigrants retain sufficient housing, education, and community resources, and also a big one, to cover the essential and substantial legal fees and admin costs of the immigration process. All of those pieces really matter. And so everything you place in the baskets this morning or donate by texting share to the number on the screen, which is a great option for our Zoom folks. Everything will be shared equally with Sanctuary Everywhere and to support Foothills' mission to unleash courageous love in our lives and across northern Colorado and beyond. We've come to maybe my favorite part of our service, which is the gratefulness practice. And I invite you now to just take a moment. I see all of you, some of you shifting or getting your feet a little bit firmer on the ground, whatever feels good for you. And we're just going to take a moment to take a deep breath and allow something to stir up that ignites that sense within you of gratitude. And this isn't what you should be grateful for, gratefulness practice. This is about something that's true, and maybe it's really small, or maybe it's really big. So I invite you here just to take a moment, take a deep breath. Maybe it's an image, maybe it's a word. And if you feel so moved, I invite you even to just either whisper it out loud or even say it out loud for others to hear. I'm definitely feeling grateful for this web telescope image, putting so much in perspective. Also for my morning coffee. It just was good this morning. So take that, whatever it is, and as you just take a couple more breaths, kind of imagining it almost filling you up. Maybe from your toes, moving all the way up your body, your shoulders and your head, filling up your cup. So grateful to be together this morning and to be with all of you. So grateful for this earth, our home, and I invite you to join me in singing our closing hymn, Blue Boat Home. You're welcome to rise and embody your spirit.
Say Making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me. It would break when surging me on. Breathe me in, let see before me. Sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathers. Never harbor or port have I known. Wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue home.
May you leave this place knowing that you are connected, surrounded by intelligent life, eager to invite you back into belonging in this great web of things. And may you be reminded this week in small and big ways that you are far from alone, but surrounded by wild life. Go in peace, go in love. Amen. Amen.